It started with a single bloody footprint. On a quiet summer day in 1990, the brutal murder of 35-year-old Jeanie Childs shattered the peace of a Minneapolis neighborhood. She was found in her apartment, stabbed more than 60 times. Blood covered every surface of the small unit. There were no witnesses, no sounds heard, and seemingly no motive. But amidst the horror, one clue stood out: a single bloody footprint. For decades, the case remained unsolved, until the science finally caught up. This is the haunting story of how one footprint and a discarded napkin helped crack a 26-year-old cold case. June 13, 1993, started like any other Sunday in South Minneapolis. But something was wrong. Tenants in an apartment unit directly below Jeanie Childs began noticing water leaking from their ceiling. The leak became serious enough to alert building maintenance, who proceeded to check Jeanie's apartment for a possible plumbing issue. What they found was a nightmare. The apartment door was closed, but inside lay a gruesome scene. Jeanie's body was discovered in the bathroom, covered in stab wounds, over 60 in total. She had been savagely attacked. Blood spattered the bathroom, streaked down the hallway, and even pulled into the flooring, dripping into the apartment below. Jeanie had lived alone. Her friends and neighbors described her as sweet-natured, warm, and always smiling. She had a job, her own place, and no known enemies. She didn't deserve this, and whoever had done it hadn't just killed her. They had annihilated her with chilling rage. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting Jeanie may have known her killer or trusted them enough to open the door. There was evidence of a violent struggle, but very little else, except for one thing: a partial bloody footprint on the floor. In '93, that wasn't enough to solve a murder. The original investigation was handled using the best forensic methods available at the time. Police collected samples, took photographs of the scene, and carefully preserved the partial bloody footprint. DNA samples were sent to labs, but this was the early 1990s. DNA databases were sparse, and matches were rare. There was no national CODIS database in the modern sense. If the killer wasn't already in the system, their identity would remain a mystery. Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. The DNA sample from the crime scene didn't match anyone. Leads dried up. There were no suspects, no witnesses, and no murder weapon ever recovered. Jeanie's case went cold. Her family, especially her mother, refused to let the memory fade. Year after year, she wrote letters to police and prosecutors, pleading with them to reopen the case. She held on to hope, believing that one day someone, somewhere, would find a way to bring justice for her daughter. Meanwhile, forensic science evolved. DNA technology advanced rapidly through the 2000s and 2010s. But Jeanie's file sat dormant, one of thousands of unsolved homicides across America. That is, until a powerful new tool arrived: forensic genealogy. In 2018, the state of Minnesota decided to take a fresh look at Jeanie's cold case. With a preserved DNA sample from the 1993 crime scene still intact, investigators turned to a method that had only recently gained national attention: uploading unknown DNA to public genealogy websites. Forensic genealogists don't look for direct matches. Instead, they find partial matches, distant relatives who may share segments of DNA, and build backward. It's a slow, methodical process that requires deep knowledge of family trees, ancestry records, and day interpretation. But in Jeanie's case, it worked. After months of careful research, one name kept appearing at the end of their branches: Jerry Westrom. A Minnesota businessman, Westrom had no history of violent crime. He was known to law enforcement, but for nothing serious, certainly not murder. But he had lived in the Minneapolis area in the early 1990s, and his age matched the estimated profile of Jeanie's killer. Police needed a fresh DNA sample without tipping him off. So they followed Westrom discreetly. At a local hockey game, he stopped to eat and wiped his mouth with a napkin before tossing it in the trash. That was all they needed. Investigators collected the napkin and rushed it for DNA testing. The results? A match to the 1993 crime scene. The killer had finally been identified. But the DNA wasn't the only damning evidence. Back in 1990, the bloody footprint left on the bathroom floor had been photographed and carefully archived. It was incomplete, but still offered valuable details like the shoe size, shape, and tread pattern. With Jerry Westrom now in focus, investigators obtained a full set of his footprint data. When analyzed using modern technology, the results were striking. The size and characteristics of Westrom's foot matched the partial print from the crime scene with remarkable accuracy. Now, investigators had both a genetic fingerprint and a physical one. The footprint, once a frustrating dead end, became one of the final nails in the coffin. In February 2019, Jerry Westrom was arrested and charged with the murder of Jeanie Childs. He immediately denied everything, claimed he'd never met Jeanie, had never set foot in her apartment. But the evidence told a much different story. Westrom's trial began in 2022. Prosecutors laid out a timeline showing that Westrom had access to the apartment building at the time. The DNA match, the footprint, and the fact that he never reported any connection to Jeanie raised major questions. The jury deliberated on overwhelming evidence. And finally, after nearly 3 decades, Westrom was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. For Jeanie's family, the moment was bittersweet. The pain of losing her would never go away. But the long-awaited justice brought closure they had been denied for years. One footprint, one trace of DNA, 26 years of silence. The case of Jeanie Childs is a testament to how modern science and persistence can turn even the coldest of cases into closed ones. It also reminds us that no matter how much time has passed, the truth has a way of rising to the surface. If you're drawn to real stories where forensic breakthroughs bring killers to justice, subscribe to this channel. More chilling cases are coming, and every story deserves to be heard.